welcome to another episode of the Color in Cannabis podcast. Today we're super excited to have another good friend of mine as a guest, Ali Jamalian from Sunset Connect. I'm super stoked for him to be here. This is an amazing brand that's all over the Bay Area, and he does a phenomenal job with branding and packaging and marketing and really representing the Bay Area. And happy to have you here, Ali.
Thanks for being here, man. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Glad to be here.
Like I was saying, I see your products everywhere. You have this really unique packaging for your pre-rolls. These are old school transfers from the local buses in San Francisco for people not in the area. And you've done a remarkable job of just representing the Bay Area and giving us a little bit of nostalgia along with some phenomenal product.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the brand identity was kind of just born from where we're from, the streets at the end of the day. And Sunset Connect was a name that we would be referred to because we had 20, 30 houses in the Sunset at one point just growing for the local dispensaries. And people would be like, go see the Sunset Connect. They'll sort you out. They got weed for you. So in 2016, when the ballot measure was voted on, I think Gold Seal, you know those guys well. That was like the only real brand in town at the time, and we were like, man, those guys are crazy putting their name on packaging. Like it ain't even really legal yet. But that was when it was 2015 or 16 when I had an illustrator make the logo, and then in 18 we decided that all the packaging should be the transfer because we really missed it. Once they started with the little printouts, the receipts, we're like, what? This transfer is an iconic design.
Yes, absolutely. And
having no marketing budget, one of the things that the transfer allowed us was that it has its informational hierarchy, right? So you have your name here. So that way we were able to change designs, but not necessarily have to redesign every time. And that was born out of necessity because I just didn't have the money for it. Yeah. So you can change colors, you can change the background, but you keep the informational hierarchy, which is obviously one of the points when you're designing stuff that's expensive, is those kind of changes. It was just a nod to the street, a nod to where we're from. I lived on Fulton Street in college. And that was my address, and I took the Fulton Fiver a lot. So we wanted to make an affordable $5 indoor joint. Realized that for me and my caliber of smoker, if you're not really wealthy, you're not going to be able to really afford your habit of smoking. Yeah. And I saw that the guys that I work with, my growers, my team, my friends, even though we grow weed, we still were on somewhat of a budget, right? So we wanted to really cater and give someone on a budget a really fair smoke. And in the legacy days, we also tried to be really competitive. I think when people were selling their pounds for $2,200, we were vending them to Basa for 19 because we really wanted it to move faster. So sales velocity has always been a big pet peeve of mine because it's a living product.
Yes.
It's always a race against time. The minute that you trim it and your cure starts, you should really have your buyers lined up. And we all know that that's getting increasingly more difficult in this environment. So we really doubled down on the pre-roll. It was, I think, 2020 when there wasn't really that many pre-roll companies yet. We saw that there's a need, there's a vacuum for a good pre-roll that's made by hand. And we wanted it to be 5 out the door. That was really, so my whole manufacturing floor is really laid out for this. And then we pride ourselves in a meticulous separation of stems and fan leaves, which is, a lot of, and I don't want to dog any other pre-roll makers, but we do unroll a lot of pre-rolls. We go into the stores. I know people unroll ours, so we know they will do that, and it's important that when you unroll it, that you're not finding sticks, stem, and dust off the floor.
Which is so common. I mean, so many of the pre-rolls that you find, if you just snap them open and pour them out, it's just dust and sticks that come out. I think that's one of the things that really distinguished you from the other pre-rolls when pre-rolls first started becoming a really big thing in the California market, was yours are actually extremely good. And regardless of the price point, it was better than pre-rolls that are twice the price.
Right. So the goal was to disrupt the $10 market. Yeah. We went and bought a bunch of $10 pre-rolls, and we can make a better $5 pre-roll than a $10 pre-roll. I think during that time, to your point, a lot of the brands were using pre-rolls as an outlet for their byproduct, right? Absolutely. That's really what it was. So there wasn't really effort put into it. Now we see that even high-end brands are copying us and trying to do a $5 pre-roll. Some of them even put a glass tip in. I'm like, how do you afford to do that? But good for you. Yeah. So I think the fact that other brands are now treating it as more of a real product than just the side hustle to get rid of some trim is good. And you know, shout out to Sluggers. They were one of the brands that really switched from their business model to focus on pre-rolls, and Josh did a great job bringing his pre-rolls to the market and offering people a different experience. And that's kind of what we do. We have 18 different blends. I've always been rolling salads.
Yes,
like I love taking a little bit of, I don't know, LCG, mix that with a little bit of Zope and get something pungent. Or I just always, since I started smoking in my youth, I always liked making salads. Throw a little hash, 3 different strains. I love hybrids, but if you mix it, it just gives you more, right? So that's what ultimately the Fulton Fibers are. They're blends of different families of strains. And like the Sunset Popsicle should always have a lemon pop or popsicle, some gelato in it. That's the one that we really try to do, like on the fruity pungent side. Then we have like our Royal Grapes, which would always have some like gas and grape in it. So we really try to separate the blends by flavor and effect. And because we make so many, we only buy our trim from three outfits, Cam, Bosky, and ourselves. We do have a little bit of control then on what goes into which product. And trying to like replicate that blend within a certain deviation is what we try every day.
No, that's huge. So many of the pre-rolls, like we were saying, are companies that are just kind of sweeping up stuff off the floor, just whatever waste that they had and packing it in, or people just indiscriminately buying any kind of cheap weed they can find. Right. And you go into Cam, Bosky, and those are top shelf companies. They have some of the best flower on the market.
100%.
So go to the people who have the best and be able to give it to people in an affordable manner. It's just really revolutionary considering the quality of so many pre-rolls that we see on the market.
You know, a lot of credit goes to our vendors because we've been working with each other for so long. They actually know how we like it delivered. And like, even if there's a batch that, let's say, has a lot of fan leaves in it, they'll let us know, like, hey, this one has a lot of leaf in it. Do you still want it? We're like, sure, we'll separate it. Or we'll say, no, this is not the grade what we're looking for. So working with your supply chain, and again, something you know very well about.
Absolutely.
That's really where I also think being a legacy player, being someone that's been around this industry for 20 plus years really helps. Because those relationships with OG growers go a long way. And now that we have our own grow up and running, we're actually even growing certain strains just for pre-rolls. So you're getting the whole flower. Nice. We got melted strawberries from Masonic Smoker, right? I love lime green smokes. I actually really enjoy lime green. It doesn't have to have color for me. I'm a old school sour diesel smoker. I like OG Kush. You know, those are the things that I like to smoke. So we got the melted strawberries, turned out to be a huge yielder because people obviously use it a lot for hash.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I told Masonic, I'm like, bro, I'm going to grow this and put this in pre-rolls because I feel like a pre-roll is also a great delivery mechanism for a strain that you would otherwise not purchase out of a bag, right?
Absolutely.
And I still smoke for effect. I love flavor, but the effect is really my main driver. And indeed, I think flavor and effect do have a relationship with each other, but yeah, to me, like a melted strawberry cough, or what Joe Snow's, what's his, the strawberry goo. Yeah. Those are all great strains.
I love Joe. Joe's
a homie. I mean, all these guys are homies, right? And I think people don't realize how lucky we are in the Bay to be fucking with our peers all the time. Like, I get to come to your podcast, bro. That's awesome. You and I were cooking together 2 nights ago.
It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. That pork belly was ridiculous. But yeah, I talk to people who are new in the space, and they're like, how do I get in? How am I able to create a business? And I tell them that most of the successful businesses are from people that have been around for a while, so they've developed a network, they develop a relationship. And so time in the space is critical, and just being an honest player. Like, there's so many folks who come in, try to make a quick buck, burn a lot of bridges, and then they don't have those relationships anymore. So coming into the space and being authentic and honest with the people that you're working with and developing real friendships, real relationships, it grows into the best business.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I mean, a good example is James Loud. We were talking about James earlier, great geneticist, great breeder here in the area. And James and I are working on a collab together. It's just natural for him to pick the genetics and for us to roll it up, you know?
I love that.
So I do love that. And I think, to your point, a lot of those brands that were hit and run brands disappeared, right? They're also gone. And I think the same goes for retail to an extent, right? When we see the MedMens disappearing, they were not part of the culture.
Yep.
But then you see a guy like Catalyst and Elliot, and he's crushing and he keeps
I love
going.
Elliot.
I love Elliot.
He's a blast. He's my favorite. First thing in the morning, I'll pull up his Instagram. So if you guys don't know, Catalyst CEO, best Instagram. He's putting everybody on fire all the time. He's a blast.
And he holds himself accountable too.
Yeah.
And that's really the difference. I think like there's a lot of us that will hold people and ourselves accountable. And then there's a lot of us that are just not. If you don't love this plant, you probably shouldn't be growing it or processing it or even selling it.
You don't belong in the business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the cash cow everyone thought it was. Like, if you're here, you're not getting rich. You're here, it's a labor of love. And if you don't love it, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And we're setting, I mean, what we're doing ultimately is we're setting the tracks for the next 2 to 3 generations where they will be able to make money on it, right? It'll become a liquor store. I mean, ultimately, dispensaries will eventually become liquor stores, which I also like. If I see the ones that do well are not the ones that spent millions of dollars on chandeliers or on displays. The ones that do well are the ones that give you your product at a fair price, get you in and out rather quickly, and have good service. And I see that, and you were mentioning Pipeline. That's one of those. You go in, you get your stuff, you get out. It's beautiful and it's nice, but they're not trying to make their chandelier money back, which is a big difference, right?
It's a huge difference.
And I feel like we're in a good place. I think this year is going to be, the first quarter is going to be tough, but that's sort of, in my opinion, is just still the repercussions of last year. And then in Q2, Q3, Q4, we'll probably have a pretty good corrected market.
Excellent.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like things are slowly getting better. And I do feel like Q1's always kind of tough right after the holidays. Sales kind of take a dip, but because people have spent their money for the holidays and a lot of the stores are dealing with taxes and other things. But we always do, things do bounce back a lot in Q2 and Q3.
Totally. And your point with the taxes is it's a huge problem, right? Well, we have 1.2 billion owed by dispensaries to the CDTFA. If you actually just kind of do the back of the napkin math, we have 1,200 dispensaries. That's $1 million a pop, right? So, and I mean, obviously it's not spread that way. Somebody owes 11 and another guy owes nothing. But the point is, if we had banking, if we had certain services that every other regular industry has, and I'm not a retailer, so I don't know enough about the retail systems, but I do know that as a regular clothing retailer, all my sales tax can be put into a different account. My bank will give me a credit line on my sales, so I wouldn't have to dip into the sales tax money, right? Yeah. So these are things that we're not getting as an industry. And the part, and I'll say it here for the first time, but I'm not running again to be the chairman of the board in the city or the state. To me, while I tried my best to advocate for the industry, 4 years of doing this have kind of disillusioned me of working with the government, right?
Tell me about the board you're on, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm the chairman of the Cannabis Oversight Committee of the City of San Francisco, and I was the chairman of the California Advisory Committee to the DCC.
Okay.
And I realized I have to give a big shout out to the City of San Francisco, because the supervisors and the former mayor's office and the Office of Cannabis, they did work really closely with us, and what they were able to use from our recommendations and execute it or implement it without having to, let's do a ballot measure or some giant vote that wouldn't go anywhere anyways. Those were the things they backed away from. But anything that was doable in terms of regs, in terms of different departments of the city making themselves more available or streamlining processes, they did all that. Whereas in the state was more of I feel like it was more of, we need to have this board, so let's just have this board,
as opposed
right?
to listening.
Yeah, and as opposed to also giving that board a mandate. That like the city gave us a mandate. The city said you have to lower the barrier for social equity. Okay, now we know what we're working on, right? And the state didn't do that. So to kind of go back to the point is, I put in a lot of my free time. I volunteered a lot of time for this, and the one realization I came to is how hard it must be for small businesses that are not that active in the regulations, in that scene, in that, let's call it the political or the regulatory scene. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
It's just not fair, and I know business is not fair, but we were supposed to build this industry different than other industries. The goal was to create some equity. The goal was to create some opportunity. And selling people a pipe dream of owning a store where you then have some predatory deal with some big chain and you're getting 60, 70K a year in salary and your name is on the liability, your name is on the permit, I feel like we misled people. We sold them a false dream.
Absolutely. What he's talking about was with our local equity programs that, especially in San Francisco and some other cities, they made it so that once they created the equity program, all the new licenses for dispensaries had to be an equity operator. And they wanted to pair those equity operators with established businesses that had money. So you're taking someone that does not have access to capital and may not have access to all the information out there, how to properly run a business, pairing them with an existing brand that has a lot of money, has a lot of experience, and often it turned into that the smaller individuals, their equity operator was getting taken advantage of by the larger business that was coming in to support them. And so trying to find examples where someone was not being taken advantage of in the equity program became really, really rare.
Far and few in between.
And some of it was like the companies being predatory, but also some of it was just the bigger companies just trying to figure out how to make it work. And I know in the beginning, some of them tried to listen to the equity operator. They didn't really know what they were doing. So all the big businesses like, well, since you don't know, we're going to take over everything, not recognizing that equity operator actually does know their community. They do have an idea what's going to work in their market, and they do have something to contribute to the conversation. But a lot of these bigger brands are just kind of freezing them out, giving them a salary to sit there and use their name, and then giving them no responsibility and no opportunity to learn and kind of like rise up to the occasion. And so trying to find equity that actually works for people is really complicated.
Right. And then to build on that a little bit, social equity was part of the ballot measure in 2016, right? So California said, yes, we're okay with recreational adult use of cannabis, but we want every county to have a social equity program. Yes. And Oakland and San Francisco were the first two to write it. And I know you were a big part of that push. And I do think that all of our intentions were good. I actually do think that the equity program in San Francisco, I would call it successful as such, because we do have a lot of operators. But to your point, between the market tanking and you giving somebody much more leverage over their partner because they are more sophisticated and they have all of the resources, that just creates an uneven business relationship within those businesses. But then you have companies, to your point, that have a good relationship with their social equity guy. They know where to deploy them. They know how to give them responsibility that will benefit the company, and they work well. I still believe in social equity. I still think, but I don't believe in giving someone a restaurant that doesn't know how to cook.
Exactly.
So I would have liked to see money go into an equity fund. And if you want to open a barbershop because you're a really good barber, then you should open a barbershop. Yeah. Probably not a dispensary that's highly regulated, no tax write-offs. This is not an easy business if you're well funded. Yeah. Let alone if you're like us and you're not well funded. Then you have to have competence, you have to know the market. And again, the reason that we became a one-trick pony, or why we really focused on pre-rolls, is because we saw an opportunity there as a small player to actually get some market share. Yes. And I remember the first time we popped up on Headset, that was like a couple months before we made a deal with Herbal. I was ecstatic. I couldn't believe that we're this tiny little company that's actually registered on Headset and is doing some numbers.
Headset is a data collection place where you could find out who was selling what amount, so people in the industry could kind of get a better idea of what their brands are doing and what other brands are doing and what sectors of the industry are more profitable than others.
And what you have to do is you have to break, I think, 1 or 2% of market share to even be listed in Headset. So for us to gain that was really big. And then we're like, okay, and then we looked at it and it became an incentive. We gamified it. In my company, we want to stay number one. That's our goal. And it's not for our ego. It's really just to prove that we can do this without corporate money, without venture capital.
Small can succeed.
Small can do. Yeah. And in a sophisticated way. I try to run an operation that can be shown and is inspection ready anytime. That's something that we really pride ourselves in. We're really proud that when a delegation comes from France, from Germany, from Massachusetts, the DCC will say, go see Sunset Connect. You'll be really impressed with how they're doing it. And that is a really point of pride for me, because we're the small guys, dude. Yeah. We're just so tiny. There's 14 of us that make 30,000 joints a week, and we sell them. And
that's crazy. How many joints a week do you sell usually?
30 to 40,000 individuals a week.
That's ridiculous. I don't know what state y'all are in or what part of the market you guys are in, but the idea that a small independent company can crank out that much of quality in any market is phenomenal.
And I think it's important to say we do it on 100 cavity knockbox. Yeah. We have one knockbox. Yeah. We grind in 100-gram batches. So that's something that's really important to me. What we've done is we've automated everything around our production process, but not our production process.
Beautiful.
Packaging is automated. Case sealing is automated. I'm trying to get a robot arm to put the joints into tubes, but rolling the joint and topping it until it's ready to smoke, that has to be by hand. No machine can imitate the feeling that my guy has that's topping the joints.
Yeah,
you know,
that's super critical for folks, because again, as people try to scale, they're always trying to automate everything. And a lot of people who don't consume pre-rolls, a lot of the bigger businesses where they're just really corporate, bought these huge $100,000, $500,000, $500,000 machines to build these joints that are terrible. And I've been around a couple brands where they have these machines that are the size of a room, that they spend all this money on, then they have to hire someone to teach them how to use the machine, and they'll spend 6 months trying to dial it in to finally have inadequate joints, where they could have just had a couple people just banging it out the entire time. So it's really important, especially for folks who are trying to get into the space, is realizing that you don't always need the biggest piece of equipment. What you need is skilled people who have an idea of what they're doing, who can be efficient, who can be fast, but create a quality product by hand as opposed to relying on some expensive equipment.
Yeah, and smokers that actually, if you have smokers making your joint, they're going to see if they're going to want to smoke that thing or not.
And then listen to them, because I know a couple people, they got the smokers in the room, and the smokers like, I don't like this, and the bosses are like, the numbers make sense, keep it going, and it's like,
and then the numbers drop.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I see that a lot. And to your point, I've been on calls with makers of these big machines, and I usually at the end of the call, I'm like, who buys this from you?
Yeah.
Who actually will pay you that kind of money? And also the numbers they put for output and stuff. To your point, 6 months of training, your operator better be really, really good, right? And we see those in the market. We see them coming in. And, my internal speech to my team this year was, we're going to have copycats.
Yes.
And we're excited for it.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this.
Says you're doing it right.
Let's do this.
So again, we are going to go back to like where we're from and all that kind of stuff. But I really wanted to kind of launch the podcast really kind of focusing on the packaging and just what you're doing branding wise. So many people, I believe, listen to this or watch this podcast trying to figure out how they can get into the industry, what their lane is. And people are all over the country, all over the world. And there's something important about representing your community. Something that you're from San Francisco, you're connected. The story of the transfer papers means something to you, and the customers, anyone who's been in San Francisco any amount of time, they recognize this. They're like, oh, that's the old school muni, the old school bus transfers. It brings a little bit of nostalgia, and just kind of really capitalizing on that. You don't have to have a brand that looks like the slickest, most high end thing that you just spend a bunch of money with some brand creator to kind of develop for you. Pick something from where you're from, represent your community, and then do it with quality and class, and you can be really, really successful. So I think that's a super important model for other people trying to figure out a way in the industry. You don't need $1 million. You don't need to sign up with some big company. Figure out some way to represent your community, do it authentically, do it with some beauty, some interest, do something that kind of makes people laugh, give them a smile, and then have quality in there. And that's a really big difference. I think there's a lot of other pre-roll companies, they'll have snazzy packaging and they'll have a good marketing plan, but they're putting seed stems and sticks inside the pre-roll. So to have the marketing right, but also have top quality actually in it at an aggressively reasonable price, you really can't beat that.
Well, people won't come back if the quality's not right. They'll buy it once, right, for the packaging. And I always say that to my team. I'm like, they'll reach for it for the packaging. But if what we're giving them inside is not the best, they won't come back. No. And that's okay. That's what I would do the same as a consumer, right? Be absolutely no different.
You got one shot. I tell people all the time, like, people will buy your brand, and if it's bad, they're not coming back to it. So you got one chance to lose that customer. So you always, every batch, especially with us, sometimes the batch isn't that great, but it's concentrates. You already did it. You want to do something with it. And it's like, no, if you package it and put it out an inferior product, that new customer is going to assume that everything you've ever done is like that. So the importance of always being on point with your quality is key.
Yeah, we a couple days ago, we had one batch, first time in a year. I smoked one. I was like, we're not releasing this batch. And like, we already wrote 15,000. I'm like, cool, keep them in inventory. Like, I'm not putting this batch out. It tastes a little bit too hay. It was a little bit too chlorophyll-y. I'm like, no. And my CEO was going nuts. I'm like, dude, no, we can't do that.
Can't
like,
risk it.
I know it's only $5, but we can't do that.
Can't risk it.
And what I wanted to say about the Muni ticket was, it's kind of, if you know, right? But I had reps from Herbal tell me, oh, these won't do well in SoCal. I'm like, they don't know what it is. It's just a design to them. And it's an appealing design. It's a pretty cool design. Right. Yeah. So I do think, to your point, pay homage to where you're from, because I remember when we started, everyone was, we were self-distributing, which is incredibly prohibitive. If you are trying to get into the industry and you happen to be in California or a state where you're allowed to do your own distribution, one thing I wish I would have done before I started distributing my own stuff was the math on how much it cost to distribute. Because we were serving 50, 60 stores before we went to Herbal, and we're like, how come we're not making money?
Yeah.
Like, our cost of goods, it should be profitable, but making those deliveries, supporting the sales, training the bud tenders, that swallowed up all of our profit and then some, making us ultimately not profitable, right? And I would, if I started again, I would do the math on whether it's not worth it to go to a full service or a 3PL model. I mean, you're with Cannabis, you're really happy. Yeah. I'm with Up North with a full service company. I'm really happy because for our respective businesses, those things make sense. Yeah. But you and I both did our own distro too. We know how hard it is. It's really difficult. And as a small company, I say, establish yourself in your community, be the coolest and the best brand in your own community, and then go from there. Yeah. And we went from, you know, after Herbal, I think with Herbal, we were about 160 stores. When they collapsed, we shrank back down to 30. And then with Up North, we're now in over 260 stores a year and a half later. So we contracted, we expanded, we contracted, and we expanded again. And that's another thing that I think cannabis business owners should be ready for. Yes. It's not a lot of businesses have to half their staff and then hire people back a year later. We've all had to do that. I think the acceptance to contract and expand is another really important thing. But you know, to go back to marketing, you mentioned the word nostalgia, which is sort of my driving thing, because I personally love buying things that are nostalgia invoking. So I started with this little, the Happy Deal box. And as I was making these, I was making mock-ups at the office, literally cutting it with paper. My whole team was walking by just, what the fuck is he doing? This is going to suck. And I'm like, I'm just trying to brainstorm fun. Here. Wait. Yeah. But then I actually hired a professional company to make them. And when they arrived, everyone's like, well, these are dope. Yeah. I'll take one of these. But the idea was, because of all these fucking regulations out there, and you can't, you know, we're not trying to appeal to kids. We're not trying to do something that's egregious. We just wanted an exit bag. Yeah. We just wanted to give people a motivation to buy 10 of these. Because what happens is a lot of dispensaries tell us that the typical Fulton Fiber buyer comes in, buys 3, 4, sometimes 5, or kind of however many flavors they're stocking at the moment. So the idea was, hey, this is a really good thank you to our customers that buy them in multiples. So if you buy 10, you get a little swag in there. It's got like a little koozie, a little wristband and a sticker. Comes with 10 Fulton Fibers, and if you tag us, you get a chance to win a couple shirts. And every month we give away something. So, but that was like, again, I didn't have more money. So this is one way I can say thank you to my customers where I don't have to charge them more for the joint. I will not do anything that will require me to charge more for the pre-roll. And that's sort of people call me cheap, but I will call it whatever you want. But that is what it is.
I mean, it makes a difference. As we were talking about before we started the podcast, do a lot of demos where you have to sit in the corner of a club for 3 to 4 hours and kind of promote your product. And it can be boring. And so usually what I do when I'm doing a demo is I'll just keep track of the customers coming in and what they're buying. And I'll try to write it down, figure out what product category is doing the best, what brand's killing it. And particularly at the pipeline stores, particularly North Beach Pipeline, I did a demo there one Saturday, and you were 90% of the sales. Like, everyone coming is, I need that $5 Sativa joint, I need that $5 joint, I need that San Francisco joint, I need the Muni joint. Like, whatever name they knew it as, they were coming for it. And I just asked the staff, and they're like, this is every day. We have people treat it like a coffee shop. They come in every day, buy their morning pre-roll on the way to work or home from work, and they just do it. And I'm like, why aren't they buying Ace or quarters? And she was like, do you go to a coffee shop? I was like, yeah, I don't grind my own beans at home. I go on the way somewhere, I just grab a coffee. And it's not as cheap as doing it at home, but the convenience of that. So creating a product that's high quality, that they can remember what it is, and keeping it at all the clubs, it was just beautiful. And just seeing that sales velocity, it made me start, maybe I need to think about pre-rolls, but more importantly,
let's collab. Let's do this.
We're down to that. But just the idea of having something high quality, well-branded, great value is really indispensable.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, it was a really big risk to gamble on that, because if we wouldn't hit the volume, like, we just became profitable this year. And when I say profitable, no one's like raking home the money, but we're paying all of our bills and we're starting to pay back some of our loans, which is really big for a cannabis company. But when we did that, we knew, like, unless we hit 100,000 a month in sales, we're not going to survive. So, like, volume is really important. And we're so lucky to have an amazing customer base that really loves us and supports us. I went down to the Catalyst stores with Wendy from Space Jam
Love Space Gems, one of the best edibles out in the market.
The best gummy in the market. There's no better one. And Wendy taught me this. She's like, go into the store, stand in the corner. Anyone that comes in and wants to buy your joint, you should pick up that tab. Which again, as a $5 joint is awesome. I was just sitting in there. I bought 20 people joints, dropped $100. Yeah. Poor Wendy had to buy 20 people Space Gems. That's like $800, right? But me just seeing in LA random people walking in and buying it was just, it felt so good. It's such an honor when people grab your product. Like, as someone who grows it and rolls it and smokes it himself, like, if you like what we're making for you, that means more to us than the money. To an extent.
I really, there's very few things are as thrilling as someone like, I've been buying yours for X number of years, and they start talking about strains that you haven't had in years. Like, oh, I love this one. Whatever happened to that? And you're like, I have no idea. But
that makes you so happy. I can't even describe what
it
does. Like, my endorphins just start rushing. You know.
And to me, that's the sign that you belong in this space. It's like I shouldn't say a good cannabis owner, but like, if you're just thrilled that people want your product, that they recognize your product, if that brings something warm inside of you, this is a space to be in. If you're just looking at the bottom line every month and you need every month to beat the last month and that's all you're looking at, this isn't the place for you. But to genuinely be excited that people enjoy what you create, that they're excited that people have a connection to your brand. I mean, that people randomly, I'll see people wearing our Oakland Extract shirt, and I almost want to stop and be like,
I see your shirts a lot.
It blows me away. But people are like, oh, I've had this for X number of years, and they have no idea that I'm with the company. They're just like, I love this brand, or I wear my gear all the time. And people will be like, I love that brand, and I kind of want to tell them that's mine, but I don't. But it's just a thrill to get that recognition.
It really is. It really is, and I think kind of goes back to what we are talking about earlier. If you don't love this plant, and a lot of us risked our freedoms for this plant,
or lost their freedom for it.
Yeah, or hopefully some will get out. I mean, today at noon, they are going to release the list.
2,500
non-drug violence. So, but I hope that I really hope the majority is cannabis. That would be the right statement to send out. And then the next thing kind of that I try to do is collabs with, Bay Area. I mean, let's call them legends because that's what we call us serious. But, Black Sea from RBL Posse is a homie. And I approached him after we did the San Quinn collab. And I was like, you really are the representation of weed in San Francisco. Like, would you down to do a collab? And so we're bringing this back. This is going to be a staple now, is the Black Sea RBL Ruthless by Law strain, which is a cross between our Rainbow and ZA. So it's an RS11 ZA cross. It's really, really nice. I brought us some to smoke after the show.
Love it.
And we're doing a collab with James Loud and with Bruno's Rolls. So this year my goal was to start a second pre-roll line so I can actually do collabs and bring our dog walkers back out. They're dropping in a couple of weeks. But for us, it was always, well, if we make a different joint, then people won't have enough fibers. So we had to actually get to a point where we can add a second line so that it doesn't really, bite into our fiber production. And really excited. We had a really good year and in 24, which I know, not everyone had. So there's a little bit of guilt, but I'm also really proud of my team. They worked really, really hard. And we're stoked. We're bringing flowers back. We're going to bring some collabs back. I think we should run one.
Oh, I'm down. I'm definitely down. In fact, I was just talking to James too after I was on his podcast, and we're talking about trying to do some collab, but I would love to collab.
That's a three-way. I love it. I mean, James wants to do one. We're going to do 1 2-gram big boy, just flower. But my first thing was like, we need a hash hole too.
We're talking about that. So we're definitely going to do that. Okay, so it's a Coloring Cannabis podcast talking about people from different backgrounds. And you have a very unique story that led you here. So where are you from? What's your family background? And give us the scoop.
I'm a double immigrant. So my family escaped Iran during the revolution. During the revolution in 1979, I think I was 3 or 4 months old, and my parents wanted to come to the Bay Area, but by way of Germany. My dad liked Germany so much that they ended up staying there. So I grew up in Germany, in Düsseldorf, which is close to the Dutch-German border. Grew up in the 80s and 90s, facing incredible amounts of racism in Germany. Also because that generation, there was no wokeness back then, right? So I was referred to as the little black-haired kid. Like, oh, you speak German? It's like, I've never lived anywhere else. German. I'm German. So racism was pretty prevalent. I remember like I was at a McDonald's, ironically a McDonald's as a kid, and they wouldn't serve me because I was like 12 years old. I was just wanting to buy a cheezeburger after school, and they thought I didn't have money to buy a cheeseburger.
That's crazy.
So like, you know, I walked
it's McDonald's.
out.
It's a dollar.
It's very affordable. Yeah, I remember walking out crying, telling my dad. My dad dragged me back in there, and you know, he's like, "You have the right to eat here, and you're going to tell this guy." I was 12 years old. That you stand up for your own rights. You're no different. You speak German. You've been here your whole life. Just because you were born somewhere else doesn't matter. But they also, I remember that was sort of a trigger event for my parents to say, okay, we're going to put you in an international school with other immigrant kids. Like, so I left the German public school system in like 7th or 8th grade, went to an American school. My grandma has been in the East Bay since the 70s. So I came here every summer. So I loved the Bay, and I loved San Francisco because it was the one place I didn't feel discriminated against, even as a kid or even as a young adult, right? Until I got busted by the feds. I moved here when I was 18, and by the time I was 20, we were moving a pretty good amount of weed for the late 90s. I think I got popped with, you know, I had 10 pounds the night before I got popped. I had 1 left when I got popped. And back then there was mandatory minimums. We're talking 10-year mandatory minimum on this stuff. So they tried to deport me because I didn't have an American citizenship yet. So I went through deportation proceedings. I pled guilty, was put on parole, and then they wanted to deport me. So I couldn't leave the country, couldn't tell my parents that I've been popped for weed. They thought I was just in college going to school. And I was really fortunate to have a very good attorney. Shout out Alan Dressler, one of the legends in criminal defense in the city. And we fought the case for about 2-3 years. We got to set it aside. We took my plea back. We relitigated it, and the case was dismissed. And from that point on, I knew that cannabis was something that I would never quit. Yeah. I was failing piss tests in federal probation. They're like, you got to stop smoking. I'm like, I can't. Why? There's nothing wrong with smoking. I'm not hurting anybody.
It's
smoking.
medicine.
Right. So to go back to, I think if you were willing to go through that, this is, no matter how hard it gets, it's still fun.
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to drive things from the mountain, and I was telling somebody about that, like the trepidation of like Willits and just like about an hour of that drive where you're just on pins and needles the entire time. I don't want to go back to that for anything. I don't want to ever page anybody ever again and wait and not know what I'm going to get. I mean, this is what we deal with in the legal market is a headache, but what was going on 10, 20 years ago, or I guess really 20 years ago now.
25 years ago,
that's crazy.
Isn't it?
But the way it used to be is just so much worse.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. Yeah. Even like 2013, people are still getting jacked for like pounds, right? I mean, it happens now, but at least we have cameras. Exactly. I mean, there's a big difference.
Well, they give it back to you though. They might keep it in evidence for 6 months, but you get it back.
But yeah, and then when Trump got elected the first time, I still wasn't a citizen because I was a German citizen and had a green card. And I'm like, that's good enough. Yeah. And I was in Mexico, and the Muslim ban thing happened. And ironically, like, dude, I eat pork, I drink. Like, I'm a German, man. Like, I'm like, in terms of culturally, I'm very German. I couldn't come back. So I was stuck in La Playa, which is not a bad place to be stuck. I'm not complaining. But I was stuck there for 2-3 weeks, and I realized when he got elected, I'm like, I better get my citizenship because he will deport me.
Yeah, he's not playing.
He will deport me. So, yeah, since 2017, I'm an American citizen. And I have to say that there's no place I feel more at home than in San Francisco in the Bay. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
So how does your family feel about what you're doing?
Well, it was difficult at first. So because of my background, because of having been busted, my family was also pretty traumatized, you know, the deportation proceedings and whatnot. So once we started pulling the permits, my grandma was always my favorite person in the world, you know, like all of us probably. But she had cancer as I was building out, and it took me 27 months to build out my manufacturing spot. And it is the first manufacturing license of San Francisco. But I remember she was at UCSF for one of her last chemos before she passed away. And on the way back, I drove her by Bryant. I had just gotten my permit. And I took her in a little wheelchair. I'm like, Grandma, look, this is legal now. No one can bust me again. And she's like, I needed to see this. I believe in you. Like, that. But that was like my motivation to finish my build out was Grandma, because I just wanted her to pass away knowing that she wouldn't have to worry about me. Yeah.
So before the deportation, before that you got in trouble for it, what was their position about cannabis?
They were very anti-weed, very anti-weed. And I always say part of my activism was just because I was raised in an Iranian family who thinks that weed is heroin. Yeah. You know, it's very reefer madness.
Absolutely.
But my dad is a manufacturing guy. And now he looks at it like, oh, it's a very nice manufacturing that you have. Very, very nice. I like it. It's clean. Well, he never talks about what I make.
Yeah.
He just talks about that I manufacture. They've gotten to accept it. I remember in 2016, 17, we were trimming at a house. And you remember back in the day, you couldn't order food when you're trimming because the trimmer would come. Yeah. They would smell it, and then they come to you.
Go get it. Yeah.
And then none of us wanted to go, so we literally called my mom in the East Bay, like, "Can you grab us some nitrile gloves and some pizzas?" And that was the one time she came by, and I'm like, "You're now accessory." So they've come a long way, and I'm really proud of my family for like accepting it. I also think that with adult recreational, like people like you, me, Elliot, Wendy, all these people that work their asses off, that run real businesses. People didn't know that. Like, what? These guys smoke weed all day and they work? It's like, of course. To me, it's medicine. To this guy, it's medicine, right? So I think we get to clean up with a lot of like misconceptions and false assumptions and reefer madness shit that's been around for years. For years. So I do feel really blessed that we get to do that.
Yes.
And I think we're the right people to do that.
Absolutely. So who inspired you? Did you have someone in your background that inspired you to kind of get into being an entrepreneur and kind of do what you're doing?
I think I would say my dad. I mean, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My dad's not very well educated. He came to Germany with a high school diploma and didn't speak any German. And he built really impressive companies. He wasn't educated, or he's not educated or sophisticated enough to defend what he had. But I will probably never make as much revenue as my dad did. He ended up, when the Berlin Wall came down, he raised money from his friends and around the world, and they ended up buying a lot of porcelain and crystal factories. Like, they really went big, but they made predatory contacts. And my dad always says to me, he's like, look, I sent you to good schools and universities so you wouldn't. So this wouldn't happen to you. And like, so yeah, I learned from him, but I also learned his mistakes. You know, I have a very different style than my dad. Yeah, I think I was lucky enough to be born into an entrepreneurial family, and I just loved weed enough where I was like, dude, I can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know the immigrant experience can be really tough. Like, and you've gone through 2 different countries. Did you feel like, what was the feeling about cannabis in Germany when you were there? Because you're saying you're living in Germany, but you're coming to San Francisco in the summers and going back and forth. Were you consuming cannabis in Germany? Were things permissive in Germany? What was that like?
So I'm lucky because my region is by the Dutch border. Yeah. I would say our region is like, it doesn't really have the stereotypical Germans. We laugh, we drink small beers, not big beers. We have very small beers. We're funny. We're closer to like the French in terms of culturally. So my region is not too bad. And because of the closeness to Holland and the fact that you can buy, like, we used to just go across the border. I've been actually buying weed retail since I was like 16. Nice. I didn't really have hookups. We just get on a train, go across the border, walk into 2-3 coffee shops, get our skunk number 5, get our Northern Light Silver Haze, all the Dutchy strains.
Yeah, the classics.
Amnesia. And my friends, all my grower friends, like, it's a Dutchy strain, give it to him, he'll like it. So in my region, it's somewhat accepted. But after I got busted and I went back to Germany and I was working in advertising, I think actually the trigger event where I was like, I'm going back to the States, was I was producing good TV commercials. Rest in peace, David Lynch was one of the guys I produced an art show with. And the Germans would call me the fucking stoner. And there's a very derogatory word for smoking and smoking weed. It's called kiffen. And kiffer is like, a stoner, but it's very derogatory. So
your email.
Yeah, that's why I use it. Yeah, it's just a screw you to Germany. But yeah, so I had people from Procter and Gamble, like Colgate and shit, come on set and be like, Jamalian is a stoner. He's a pothead. We don't want him here. I'm like, cool. I'm taking my DP with me. Yeah. Because you wanted the DP. Like, we're a team. Yeah. But so still very much anti-weed. And now that they're legal. I mean, obviously, closeted smokers, we had a lot of them. That's why Germany now voted for legalization, or is currently trying to implement it. But if you look at the government there, they made it so difficult, and they made it almost impossible for any commercial cannabis to happen. So that's really what Germany's stance is, whereas I think the culture is okay with it, but the government is not. Yeah. And it's sort of very similar to here.
Absolutely.
So and everyone looks to Cali, more specifically to San Francisco. Even the Germans are like, what are they smoking over there, right? So, no, I think the culture here is, we are, when it comes to cannabis culture, I couldn't ask for a better place to be. And I do love the LA culture too, and the SAC culture. Huge shout outs to both those places. But ours is different.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You bump into growers here left and right, you know?
What about, are you connected to the wider Persian community in the Bay Area, or is it just through your parents?
Not really. I'm connected to like the few Persians in the industry here. I again, like, I kind of grew up culturally German. Like, I'm not into Persian music. My sister loves it, you know. I'd say I'm more connected to the cannabis community of Persians and Middle Easterns. That's the thing. People don't understand how many Middle Easterns are in cannabis because we're very quiet and they don't want to be like known. But some of the best stores in this area are run by, you know, Zeke.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to
Zeke
say.
is one of them.
Seven
Al
stars.
Mission Cannabis, Russian Hill Cannabis, extremely well run. Tariq from Basa. There's a lot of Middle Easterns. Iron Lion from down south. He's a Persian dude. So I there's a lot of color in cannabis. I think what people don't understand is when you're a person of color, you already have enough shit to deal with. You probably don't want to tell people that you're also in weed.
Yeah. Just adds one extra layer is nonsense.
Yeah.
The reason I was asking, because I know I'm just curious about the general Persian conception, or the American Persian conception of cannabis. Is it, as it becomes more legal here and established as medicine, is it more widely accepted in the Persian community, you feel like, or are they still kind of tight about it for religious reasons?
Well, so I can give you an indicator. It's when my mom asked me for weed for her friends. So I'm like, oh, okay. So clearly, I think, again, just kind of like Germany, upon recreational legalization, a lot of the Persian smokers came out of the closet. And I think there was a lot more than any of us expected. So it's really funny because my mom, who never smokes weed, because her friends know what I do, he's like, hey, I buy your son's products in the store. You want to kick me a couple freebies? I'm like, sure, dude, I got you. But it's mostly the older guys that are smoking. Yeah. I mean, you know, so I love that. And I mean, when I visited Iran a few times, which is a fucking trip, dude. Yeah. It's really, really
How long ago was the last time you've been there?
2006 or 7.
Okay,
so, like, you know, pretty, I mean, not that recent, but I don't think they've changed much since. People didn't even flinch when you asked for hash. I got a hash in Tehran, no problem.
Nice.
Like, my cousin, none of them smoke, but they know me. After like 2 days, I'm like sweating. I'm like, hey, I need to smoke. And they're like, you want hash? I was like, yeah. They're like, ask any vegetable stand.
That's all. That's why I was going to ask, because like hash comes from that region of the world, but there's so many religious prohibitions against it. But I feel like people there do what they live. You know?
Hash, because to your point, it's so culturally ingrained.
Yeah.
They don't. It's really downplayed. Yeah. If you like drink alcohol, they'll cut. I mean, that will prosecute you. Yeah. You cannot drink alcohol. Hash, my buddy's like, dude, even if a cop busts you with a little hash, you'll probably throw it away. They don't care.
I love that.
I was like, no way. And then my cousin's like, yeah, just see that vegetable stand over there? I'm like, dude, you're trying to fuck with me. Like, I barely speak. Like, they can tell I have an accent when I speak. I'm like, he's like, dude, just go ask the guy. And I asked him, and he had a little bubble of super sticky Afghani hash. It was like 1 gram. He charged me 50 cents for it. And I was like, here's $5, bro. Give me 10 of that.
Give me everything you got.
Yeah, and it was great. It was like, and I smoked hash in India, Manali hash, where like the guy, by the end of the 20-gram bag, I think there was at least 1.5 grams just stuck to the bag that there's no way to get it out.
I miss real hash. I mean, it's real hash, not all this BHO and all this
Come
other
over.
stuff.
I still have temple balls from Frenchie.
I'm ready. I miss Frenchie. I miss Frenchie.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, Frenchie Cannoli was a legend in the cannabis community, legend in the world. Brought so many old school techniques for creating real hash, did a lot of seminars, was very open, very loving, very giving, is at all the local cannabis events with this hookah.
Best teacher.
Yeah.
Amazing. He taught my staff how to make hash. He's
a loving dude. Like, there's so many of the OGs, him and Swami, just so many people have been here forever who all they want to do is love the plant and kind of teach love of the plant. I really appreciate that.
And I think we're just so lucky to have those people around us and to be able to
interact
with them. It's crazy.
I mean, it's just amazing people out there. I met Mila a couple times, and it's just like, wow, like you're literally a living legend, and we're sitting here smoking, and you're laughing at bad jokes. I love that. Again, since this podcast really is so much about for people who want to get in the industry, just trying to creating a roadmap for success, what are some of the main recommendations you would give for people who are coming into the cannabis space, who want to build a cannabis business, whether in California or outside of California?
I mean, I would really say do your market research and figure out your business model. I see this a lot with white label guys or brands that come to us that want us to help build their brand. And for us, like, I mean, it's just a matter of math. I'm like, well, if this costs me money, I can't do it just because I'm not big enough, right? So I tell people, I'm like, hey, make sure that you have your business model. What is your business model? Are you going to make money off your podcast and the weed is going to drive people to the podcast, or are you really trying to make money off selling weight? Because if that's what you're doing, then let me show you what we're talking about earlier, some headset data. Yeah. Let me show you some data on what's moving, what's not, how much of it is moving. I think what you said is people come into this industry sort of blind and just blue-eyed and say, hey, I can do this. It's just weed. Everyone smokes it. We're more like where craft beer was in the early 2000s, right? If you're not a good brewer with a good concept and hopefully a little bit of distribution or at least some pre-orders, right, you're going to have a hard time. Yeah. So I would tell people that want to get into the industry, first, pick what you love doing.
Yes.
If you love, like I like growing weed. I really enjoy growing weed. But I really love building teams. Like that's something that I enjoy doing. And 3 of my growers are better than me. Yeah. So why would I go in there?
Yeah, exactly.
Like these guys grow better weed than me. My basement weed's great, but that's like, it's different. So, and while I consider myself a grower because I started with that, I wouldn't call myself a grower anymore because it's not what I do every day, right? But I accepted that I'm more used to my cultivation and packaging and getting that product to the people. So build a team around you, even with them, you've done the same. Yeah. There's 2 or 3 of you and you guys all have your lanes, you know what you're doing. I think I see that a lot, that there's a lot of crossover, people getting into each other's lanes. And find a product. Find a product that you love making, or if you're a retailer, curate well. Yeah. So one thing I see in California right now is that these stores are looking, and I've been saying it for years, they're gonna look homogenous. If there's only 7 brands that are fronting credit to stores, they're gonna be homogenous. So if you're opening a store, curate well. If you're gonna open a grow, then you probably already know what you're doing, because no one's, or if you don't, then probably you don't want to open the grow. And if you want to have a white label brand, go partner up with someone who will give you the reality and just doesn't want your batch money. Yes. That's really what I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess you kind of already answered this too, but what are some of the warnings you would give people about coming in the space? What are some of the pitfalls, easy mistakes that you see a lot of people make that you're like, hey, just don't go down this road?
I think it's expectation management is probably the biggest one. I think people... and margins. I think people don't understand how slim margins have become in this business. They used to
just don't understand what the word means.
Yeah, or that.
I had someone, Eric, had the drilling in my head, margins. I'm like, I just want to sell it. I don't care how cheap it is. Like, no. You care. And if you don't understand it, you're going to understand it. And I understand it now, Eric.
No, it's really important. And even if you're going to a trade show, right? Like for us, we did our first Hall of Flowers this year. We've been in business for 5 years. Yeah. This was the first year I could actually afford it, where I was like, this 10 grand is not going to really cut into my product margin, right? It's, I guess, a little bit of the profit that we made. So we can now throw that at marketing. But we couldn't do that before. I was like, well, if I do that, then I can't make this many joints this month because that money needs to go for raw material, right? So I think understanding your cost structure, understanding the cash flow. I feel like most cannabis businesses, where they struggle is with the cash flow, because our AR is slower. Our terms are the same that Safeway gets from Mars, but none of us have that kind of credit, exactly, right? Yeah. But we're still playing the game as if we
net
did.
30, net 60, net 90 when they're lying.
Well, net 30 and you get paid net 60. Exactly. So I think knowing the pitfalls are, you're going to be waiting for money. Also not for any egregious reason, but it's just
the nature of the business.
The nature of the business. You should probably have a product that you can grow into your size of sales. Mm-hmm. Like I always say that batch size needs to be married to sale size. That's really the most important. And once you figure that out, and your sales velocity, that's another thing. I see people not looking at velocity. I mean, it's really the only indicator that matters for a producer, because it's a living product. I'm not going to have old product in the market while I flood it with more product, right? So just be organized. Be really well organized.
And I think something that you've pivoted back to several times is the importance of having access to data. whether it's through headset or whatever other system is out there that's tracking data, sales data. If you're in a state that has a legal cannabis market, there is a way to find out the sales data for the other brands, for other parts of the industry. And you really need to know before you make that cookie, before you make this packaged eighth, what's going on in that sector of cannabis. Is there room for growth? Is it kind of oversaturated? Just having access to data, and then or finding someone who has access to data that can crunch those numbers with you. That's one of the reasons, not one of the reasons. Neil's been a good friend of mine for many, many years. Neil,
he's a data god.
Yeah,
he's the data guru.
Data master.
Yes,
I'll just go sit there. He'll have multiple screens. It looks like the stock.
He got me into it.
Yeah.
The reason I track all this shit is Neil.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gold Neil.
Yeah. Gold Seal Neil or just Neil. If you all know Neil, you know who I'm talking about. But just access to data. If you don't have access to it, find someone who does, and find someone who can help you crunch that data. You don't just want to look at the numbers. You want to gain some understanding from that number. So relationships, again, everything, people live and die based on relationships. Do you know someone who can give you access to that, or can you access it on your own? Can you understand it on your own? So access to data, understanding what that data really means, and letting that forecast what you're going to do, and like listening to the data, not just seeing it, learning from it.
Well, I like what you said earlier too, when you said you were at when you went to do demos that you kind of follow. I think like hanging out in stores, see what people buy, see how they react when they react. I think that, and like in the business finding stage, when you're not like even, when you haven't ordered your packaging yet, when you're still conceptualizing, I think going to what you were doing is brilliant. Just sit in stores, hang out.
Yeah. And also I tell people all the time, it's like, really, if you don't know what you want to do in this space, go be a budtender. Like if you can handle retail sales, if you have any kind of personality or any kind of like you can function in that space, but working behind the counter and seeing buying habits, seeing how people ask for things, what they're asking for. They're not just asking for a pre-roll. They want a sativa pre-roll. So a significant percentage of the market understands the difference between that. Even though people argue about what sativa indica really is supposed to mean, the customers respond to that. Customers respond to price. Customers respond to packaging. Looking at and watching people and seeing what they respond to, so you can make decisions around that. And if you want to make money while you're standing there, be a bud tender and do it. But if you don't want to be a bud tender, just spend time in stores, watch them, meet some bud tenders, get to pick their brain, kind of develop a relationship with the store where you can see what's going on and kind of gain some understanding.
No, I think bud tender is the best way to get into the industry, because you see all the brands, you see the customer, you see the actual regulatory hurdles that everyone. It's like it's a microcosm of the entire weed industry. So
and if you already have a product, take care of your bud tenders. I was just talking to a store yesterday. We were on a conference call, and they're asking, like, what do you do about sales and marketing? Like, we're a small team. I just take care of your bud tenders. I want to come to them. I want to meet them. I will come to your store as many times as it takes to make sure I do a staff training for everybody. I don't want to just catch the people that are there on that Wednesday. I'll come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to get all your staff. And we can't afford it, but there's going to be staff samples. Like, the staff have to smoke it. You cannot ask a bud tender to sell something they've never smoked. I mean, you can, but they're not going to be that successful.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
Samples, and just getting to know the bud tenders, getting close to the bud tenders. They're your best friend. They're your most important asset or your most important ally in being successful.
Yeah, it's your first line of representation. That's literally. So what we do is every third Thursday of the month, we throw a party at a different bar in San Francisco, and it's called Sunset Sessions. We have a comedian that roasts people, but it really started, or it still is, my main way to connect with bud tenders and outside their work.
I love that.
And we want to take care of them. We want to sesh with them. We want to smoke with them. I honestly think the biggest part of our success is exactly what you just said. We take care of the bud tenders.
I mean,
and we love the bud tenders. They're the most... They're like us. They're there because they love weed.
Yeah, they're stoners.
Yes, they're just like us. And I'm a huge fan of all of our bud tenders. And again, just you go into certain stores and you see how they're trained, and you see them all smiling, and they're super awesome. And most of the stores I deal with are like that. I've yet to really meet or go into a store. I go, oh, your bud tender wasn't friendly. I've always had bubbly, awesome bud tenders.
And honestly, how the bud tenders interact with the customers will decide if I want to do business with that club. If I do go in a club, because often I'll go in and kind of hang out at the club before I try to pitch to the buyer. And if it's one of those clubs where clearly they just hired them because of how they look as opposed to what they know, or if everyone's just so stoned, there's just zero customer service.
Or lackluster.
If no one really cares. Like, I don't really want to be there, because it's just like, I want to be someplace where the staff is engaged. They want to sell your product. They want to know about your product. They're passionate about your product, because really, I can't afford to give samples to every store. I can't afford to do demos at every store. So if you're going to be part of our portfolio, it needs to matter that I'm going to spend my afternoons there hanging out with your staff. I'm going to be giving away $100 worth of product every time I'm there. It needs to be a place where I'm actually going to get return on that investment. And so
Well, and we're also like they care about. Like I realize when I go to certain places, they're really happy to meet like the founder of the brand because you and I care. We're like we love our brand, so we explain it to them right. And we actually, because we're so small, we said we can't do demos, but we will cook up your bartenders. Yeah.
It's critical.
And look, when I was in my 20s working at a bar, I also wanted the swag and the samples that came from the brands. And often the GM would grab them and they don't trickle down. So I really care about what you said. You go meet the bartender, you put it in their hand. I'll take care of the GM. The buyer's also going to get taken care of. But I want you to have pre-product because that's really part of working there. Yes. One of the incentives when you work is the free the perks.
Yeah,
you gotta get them the perks.
And also, like I've talked to other brands that don't see the value of that, and I tell them most bud tenders are the tastemaker for their entire friend circle. Like most bud tenders don't just hang out with bud tenders. There's a bud tender who hangs out with friends in all these other industries, and those friends come to them. What's good? What should I be smoking? So it's not just what they know in the store. It's what they hear about outside the store. It's going over to a friend's house. I love dab mats, any kind of swag I can give them if they want to represent the brand. So like I love the idea of the box. It's like that box is beautiful. It's going to sit on someone's shelf at home. Everyone who comes in, what's that? It creates a story, it creates a conversation, and just brings more people into the tent.
Correct. No, and to your point, I firmly believe that the customers that walk into dispensaries really need consultation.
Yes.
Very few of them are like us that only live weed. I mean, we tend to live in this bubble and think everybody knows strain names and stuff. Not even that, dude. I say strain names to people that smoke weed every day. They're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Right?
Good weed. I like the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the bud tenders are such an important line of education as well. Yeah.
It's crazy. When I travel, like I just went to go visit family in D.C., and I went into a Maryland club, and like I know a lot about cannabis, but I'm not in Maryland. I don't know any of these brands. I don't know any of the growers. Like I know the strains, but I don't know who actually created it. So having that relationship, being able to talk to the bud tender, having them to be able to tell me this is a legit brand, this is just some commercial BS. That's super important. Right. So train your bud tender. When you get to know the bud tender, so they can then train your customers.
For sure. And these bud tenders have good palates, dude.
Yep. All right, it's super great to have you here, Ali. Thank you so much. Definitely going to come to one of these bar events. I love the sound of that, and I also have the bingo brawls happening, right?
I think that's I think that's the guys over at Mission Cannabis.
Oh, okay,
yeah. It's the OG, the DJ or something. I mean, we have SF Weed Week coming up, so we're gonna have some real events and fun events. The Sunset Sessions is really a give back to the community. You should definitely come out.
I'm definitely
awesome.
Gonna do it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great talking to you, brother. Thank you, Ali, for coming through. It was great talking to you. I've loved your brand for years, so I love telling your story. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thanks for everyone for joining us for another episode of the Coloring Cannabis podcast.